I'm in Kyiv, Ukraine, and while the city is no longer a battle zone and some have returned to normal everyday life here, there is still a desperate need for the people who have been impacted by the war.
З того самого початку чи отут, хоча б. Я там боюся, щоб воно не впало, бо воно падає. Воно мокре і падає.
This thing is actually might fall down, so be careful.
Tatiana's village is one of many surrounding Kyiv that Russian soldiers occupied and destroyed while trying to make their way to the country's capital. Kyiv, a bustling city, a beautiful city, a city that on the surface doesn't feel like they're in war. But at any given moment, but the thing is, you wouldn't know it by walking around. Hotels and restaurants are open. Most buildings are intact. And despite everything that's happened, things feel normal. But the stories the Ukrainian people hold are far from it. Alex is our driver and our translator. He's from Ukraine and has taken us all around the country, but he's also decided to evacuate his family from the country. So Alex, why did you decide to do that?
My family, I have 3 kids. We were sitting in a cold bomb shelter, so we decided we can't really live this way with our kids. That's why we went to Romania.
And Romania is where we began our 2-day journey to get to Kyiv, Ukraine. The country is roughly the size of Texas. And because of the war, airports are closed. So the only way in is to drive. I went with Generation Hope International, a Tampa-based nonprofit taking humanitarian aid to areas most impacted. Along the way, we stopped in Lviv, a historic city in western Ukraine. We came across these people who were packing 6,000 boxes of food to help those in the eastern part of the country.
Rice, fish, also flour.
Irina says she's staying in Ukraine because her husband can't leave.
And I don't want to go alone without my husband.
Men ages 18 to 60 are forced to stay in the country in case they are needed to fight. Some praying they won't have to. Others sent into battle, like the remnants of the one we saw while making our way to Kyiv. This is what is left of a Russian tank. There's several of them along this road right here. Russians were actually using this road to try to get to Kyiv, but Ukrainian soldiers came and stopped them. A charred shoe sits next to the destroyed tanks, a frightening reminder that they are still very much at war. Behind me is a sign that says, "I love Ukraine." And not far from it, here in the country's capital of Kyiv, are more than 11,000 flags marking the number of Ukrainians who have been killed by Russia since the war began. Crumbling buildings haunt the outskirts of the city. A graveyard of cars destroyed by missiles on the highway to Kyiv are stacked up on the city's edge. Ukrainian pastor Vyacheslav Kovit shows us video of right after some of those bombings. Most of them are too gruesome to show. He takes us to Andriivka, a small village north of Kyiv. It was among dozens of villages seized by Russian soldiers who terrorized civilians and destroyed homes before eventually withdrawing in early April. It's where Tatiana's husband was shot and left in a ditch while she hid in the basement of what's left of her home. We were happy here. We had love here, and now there's nothing left. We met up with Lena, who lives a few houses away. She shows us how her home is damaged by missiles, and you can still see bullet holes in the walls. She says her elderly husband fell ill after Russian soldiers blasted through their door and beat him so badly that he remains in bed to this day. The stress has been terrible. We are crying a lot. We begged the Russians not to kill us. The people in the small village are still in desperate need of help. Generation Hope International brought them boxes of food. I met with the town's mayor, who took us to a leveled kindergarten. He says after destroying it, the Russian soldiers used it for their trash.
Disaster, terrible things. They were shooting people.
So I asked him, why are people still living here? He simply explained that Russia wants people to be afraid, to live in fear. And if they do live that way, then Russia wins. Now, with nothing but hope and help from others, they work to rebuild. I'm praising God and giving thanks to those who are sent by God. Resiliency doesn't begin to explain the people of Ukraine. No one is untouched by the devastation of the war, but they still have the courage, strength, and faith to keep living their lives and remaining hopeful while believing in God, their country, and each other. In Ukraine, Wendy Lane, ABC Action News.